City of Longview is conducting controlled burns at a compost site to free up space. KLTV7's Bob Hallmark explains why.
There were calls to the fire department last week as residents saw a pillar of smoke south of Longview, but it was a planned burn.
We have it all pushed up in separate little piles and we have it separated, so we'll have that controlled burn in that area.
The city began the burns last week because along with the normal delivery of organic debris, recent storms created more limbs and cut trees brought to the 16-acre facility, which is running out of room.
Commercial people come in and then they're having to clean up and they're bringing everything out here because we're like the only place here in Longview.
Every day there are regular deliveries of debris lumber here at the compost site, but storms create tons and tons of it.
A lot of trucks coming in, residential people coming in, bringing stuff from their yards, from tornadoes, high winds, or whatever. We're just burning it down to create more space, to have more stuff to come in.
The site's original purpose was to divert organic materials that would have gone to the landfill, and extending the life of the landfill and saving the city around $125,000 a year.
We want to be able to make space so people can still continue to bring their stuff here and keep their yards clean and neighborhoods clean.
Anticipating possible debris from future storms, they had to make a move.
We're going to start lighting a couple more piles probably in a couple of weeks. Being around here, we never know what's going to happen. So,
Bob Hallmark, KLTV 7 News.
Now, the site regularly creates mulch from the organic debris, which they provide to citizens at no cost. But because of the time the process takes and the space needed right now, that extra organic debris is being burned.
And staying